Hi, this is Brad Linder with Liliputing, and this is an HP Pavilion dm1, which is a new 2012 version of a portable laptop from HP. It weighs about 3.5 pounds, has an 11.6-inch display. It's about a 1.3 inches thick here in the rear, so it doesn't really qualify as an Ultrabook, and it has an AMD processor, which is also going to prohibit it from being called an Ultrabook since Intel controls the Ultrabook name. But it's much faster than a typical netbook, and as you can see from the HDMI output here, it can handle HD video among other things, as well as some 3D graphics. This particular model has an AMD E2-1800 processor, which is one of the newer low-power chips from AMD, and it's a little bit faster than what you would have gotten from last year's model, but it's not much different, really. So if you have an AMD E350 or E450, this is pretty similar. It's not necessarily worth upgrading, but it's definitely a step up from from a netbook. You can see there's a vent here along the side. It does get pretty loud at times when it blows the air out using a fan. We've got a key lock, power adapter, HDMI, USB 2.0, VGA, Ethernet, 2 more USB 2.0 ports, so there's a total of 3, separate mic and headphone jacks instead of the combo jacks you see on a lot of Ultra Portables, and an SD card slot. Before we open this up, let's take a quick look here at the speaker, which is Beats audio and goes all across the bottom here. It's actually one of the louder laptop speakers that I've encountered, especially on an 11.6-inch model, so it's nice to have. There's a this is a demo model, so I'm going to cover up some stuff here, but there's a single panel on the bottom which covers up the hard drive and RAM and other components, and you can pop out the battery this way. Battery sits flush with the back, but as we saw before, the back is about 1.3 inches thick, so it's not that hard to sit flush with it. It's a 6-cell, 65 watt-hour battery. And the lid has, and the base as well, has sort of this soft touch finish to it. It's got a textured pattern, kind of attractive. This is black. It also comes in a couple of different colors. It's because the finish is not glossy, you might think that it doesn't necessarily show smudges or fingerprints, but it kind of does. You sort of collect finger oil here, and after a while it really doesn't look quite as attractive, and it definitely collects dust. So, you know, it's not glossy, it doesn't have that same sort of glare effect that you get on a lot of others, but it does have its own problems. It's a little bit difficult to keep clean, I've found. Open the guy up, and you can see here we've got a glossy screen and a glossy bezel around the screen, so it's not necessarily the ideal laptop for use outdoors, and you can see that we've got a fair amount of glare here from a window. Let's take a quick look at the keyboard. It's pretty much the same keyboard that HP has been using for the last couple of years on laptops of this size, which is for the most part a good thing. The spacing is nice. There's a little bit of flex in the middle, meaning if you push down, the whole keyboard area will actually go down just a tiny bit. I don't find this to be a big problem, but I know that some people are looking for sturdier keyboards than that. It's an island-style keyboard, which means that there's a little bit of space between each key, and they're all flat keys. The one thing that I don't love is that the page up and page down buttons here are, and also the up and down arrow buttons, they serve double duty when you hit the function key and hold them. We've got these sort of half-size keys, so they're a little bit hard to detect with your fingers when you're not looking at the keyboard. You can get used to it, but it does take a little while, you know, and it's tougher for me because I have a lot of different laptops that I'm reviewing on a regular basis, so I have to move from one keyboard layout to another. If this is your only laptop, you'd probably get used to it pretty quickly. Touchpad area, we've got distinct buttons below the touchpad, and this actually sits flush with the palm rest area, but it's got a textured finish so that when you do drag your finger over the edge, you can easily detect that you're at the end, so that's nice. This little indent here, if you sort of double tap it, I have a hard time doing this sometimes, but it turns on a little light here, and what that's doing is disabling the touchpad so that if I have an external mouse plugged in, I can't accidentally brush this with my finger and trigger any actions. So let's take a quick look at some of the performance aspects. As I mentioned, this computer has an AMD E2-1800 processor. It offers basically about twice the performance that you could expect from a netbook processor. It's not exactly up to Ultrabook standards, but you know, in terms of everyday computing, it does pretty well. So let's take a quick look here at the Windows Experience Index, for instance. computer gets a score of 3.9. That goes to the lowest portion, which in this case is the processor. But in terms of memory, we've got 5.9, graphics 4.5, gaming graphics 6.0, and hard disk 5.9. So, you know, reasonably fast. It's sort of like a computer from a couple of years ago, for the most part, which, you know, for most people is probably fine, and for the price, it's a pretty good deal. Let's go ahead and open a web browser here, and I'll show you, you know, that, I mean, this isn't exactly something that you couldn't do with a netbook, but you've got the higher resolution display here, and it's going to load pages pretty well. So using this computer, I've had no problem running with, you know, a dozen or so browser tabs open at the same time. This particular model has, you know, I've actually forgotten how much RAM it has. I believe it comes standard with 4 gigabytes of RAM, and that's even with the $399 model, which is the starting price. So overall, you know, I'm reasonably impressed with this laptop. It's got a noisy fan, doesn't have the fastest processor, it's not the thinnest laptop around, but for a starting price of $399, a 3.5-pound computer that offers better than netbook performance in a reasonably compact package is a pretty good deal. So this is Brad Linder with Liliputing, and a look at the HP Pavilion dm1.